was a story that came out in Quartz. Neanderthals mated with European humans and made their immune systems weaker. To this very day, they don't even know the origins of that Neanderthal. It's not tied to anything on this planet. So technically, they don't even know who the hell they are. They really don't. If you don't know the origins of something that's part of your DNA, because it said that they're really technically modern day Neanderthals. So that being said, if you don't know where the original Neanderthal came from and what part of the planet their origins are tied to, then technically you don't even know who you are. The path to humanity as we know it was long. So over 2 million years ago, early human species slowly evolved beneficial mutation after beneficial mutation, shaping our bodies into how we look and work today. Simultaneously, these early humans were migrating all over the planet and reproducing with one another. In two papers published this week in the journal Cell, researchers from the University of Montreal in Canada and the Pasteur Institute in Paris outline findings that this interbreeding process is what led modern humans of African and European descent to have slightly different immune systems. The earliest Homo sapiens to arrive in what is now Europe made it with Neanderthals already living there and doing so acquired some DNA that codes for less aggressive inflammatory immune responses to infections. So they were open to many illnesses and viruses and infections because they had a weaker immune system. So I don't know, doesn't that make the Neanderthal look a lot weaker? I'm just saying. The findings suggest that people of African descent are better at fighting off certain kinds of infections and may explain why they're more likely to have inflammatory autoimmune disease like lupus. I was expecting to see ancestry associated differences in immune responses. Okay, so this is just the geneticist talking. So let's go down a little. All right, so Luis Barreiro, a geneticist at the University of Montreal and lead author of one of the papers, said in a statement, but not such a clear trend towards the overall stronger response to infection among individuals of African descent. For Barrio's work, he and his team took blood samples of 80 people of African descent and 95 people of European descent. I wonder why not the same amount. They found that when white blood cells in the samples were subjected to two types of bacterial infections, those from people with African ancestries eliminated the bacteria much more quickly than those from people of European descent. These cells also activated a stronger inflammatory response. When the researchers compared the genes of the immune cells, they found the genes similar to Neanderthal DNA and European cells, but not Africans. So that right there tells you we do not have any Neanderthal in our DNA. You know, and over the years, I have been reading like different articles. They're saying that Neanderthal, that thing was a straight animal. That was not a human at all. But they try to humanize it And I'm telling you, all of the depictions that we see of the Neanderthal, I don't believe it looked like that. They tried to make it look as human as possible. I don't believe they looked anything like that. I think we're all deceived on that. It's just my opinion. When you look at the bone structure of the skeleton of a real human and the bone structure of the Neanderthal, they are very different, in my opinion. That Neanderthal hardly has a forehead. And when you look at the modern day monkeys and apes of today, they don't have foreheads. But humans, we got foreheads. And you look at the eye socket on that thing, those eye sockets are huge. We don't have eye sockets that look like that. And then it has a protruding brim on top of the eye sockets. We don't look like that. But you see that protrusion on the faces of monkeys and apes, which I conclude, I know I'm not a scientist, but just looking at that skull, that thing looked probably more like a gorilla than it did a human. But these folks are desperately trying to make the thing look human. And I'm telling you, all of these depictions that we're looking at, I don't believe that thing looked like that at all. I'm just saying, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. My feelings won't be hurt. But when I look at that skeletal structure, it does not resemble a human at all because it wasn't. That's why it's called Neanderthal, because it was nothing like a human. Okay, y'all, let's get back to this. In the study out of the Pasteur Institute, researchers conducted a similar experiment with blood samples from 200 Dutch individuals, about half of whom had African ancestry and half of whom had European ancestry. They surrounded these white blood cells with a strain of the flu virus, as well as the chemical markers that usually signal a viral or bacterial infection. Once again, the Europeans tended to have less of an inflammatory response, especially to the flu virus, and had more genes similar to Neanderthals. So, in other words, they didn't fare as well as the people of African descent. As a general rule, revolution favors those traits that are advantages for living in certain conditions. And the researchers have a few ideas why immune responses differ between the two groups of people. For one thing, it could be that the infectious diseases in Africa were deadlier than those in Europe. Barreiro told Life Science Homo sapiens living in Africa would need to develop stronger immune responses to combat these viruses and bacteria than Neanderthals in Europe. Actually, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. The adaptation may have come with some unfavorable consequences, though. Inflammatory immune responses to some kinds of infections can actually be more harmful than beneficial. Luis Quintana Mercy, a geneticist at the Pasteur Institute and lead author of the French study, told Nature, maybe the most important thing is to live in peace with the microbes. These studies highlight a need to investigate different populations to understand why some people are more likely to develop autoimmune diseases. Overall, women are more likely to develop these conditions than men, and women of color 2 to 3 times more likely to do than white women. Okay, but you know what? There's a lot of things that white women get that black women don't get, you know? So to just mention one thing to me is kind of misleading. There's a lot of things Black people may have more than white people, and there's a lot of things they have more than us, you know? But they tend to do that when they do these articles. They always try to push everything in their favor and out of our favor. They tend to do that at the very end of these articles. I've seen it all throughout my life. But y'all, please tell me what you think about this article. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.